Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of this brand new series, R Programming for Absolute Beginners. And today's episode is going to be an introduction to R as well as a guide to set things up on your device. And this course is going to be really simple and easy paced course. So if you have never written a line of code before, this course is exactly for you. Alright, so to begin with, let's ask ourselves this question: what is R? Well, R is a programming language, but not just any programming language. R was built specifically for working with data, doing statistics, analyzing information, and also making charts and visualizations with the help of data. So yes, R is very data specific, and it shines the moment you start working with numbers, tables, spreadsheets, or anything real world related. But here's the important part when you're starting to learn R. You don't need to know statistics, you don't need to know programming, and you don't need to be smart at math to start with the basics. So, like I said, we're starting from the basics, that is variables, data types, functions, and the essential fundamentals that every beginner needs. And we will slowly build towards real world data work later. Now, when starting to work with R, a question might pop up into your mind. Is R important? I have never really heard of it before. So let's discuss just that. So why is R still such a big deal today? Why does R matter? Well, because nowadays almost every field is drowning in data, and R makes help sense of that data. Whether you're a student, a researcher, a business person, or just curious, R gives you the power to clean messy information, understand patterns that are hidden in data, make graphs from that data that tell a story, run meaningful calculations, and also solve real world problems, and all with a language that's beginner friendly once you know the basics. And now that I've mentioned the word beginner friendly, a question might arise. If R is built so specifically for data, can a complete beginner learn it? And the answer to that question is yes. And in fact, R is one of the best places to start. And here's why. Why R is good for beginners? Well, one of the reasons is R reads almost like English. There are commands like mean, numbers, or summary data, where numbers are a group of, numbers, and data is a group of numbers as well. These commands literally describe what they do. This calculates the mean, and this tells you the summary of the given data. Next, you get instant feedback. You type something into the R compiler or the R script, and R prints the results immediately. You understand what happened, and it's a great learning loop. Next, RStudio. RStudio makes everything easier. RStudio is the editor that we'll be using, which gives you buttons, panels, tabs, and help menus that make learning less overwhelming. And the next and final reason as to why R is good for beginners is inside R, you don't need to build big apps or complicated programs. You can start with simple tasks and scale your way up. You can start with tasks such as storing values inside variables, doing calculations, making small functions, and manipulating small datasets and visualizing that dataset or that data with the help of charts. So, now, let's discuss what this series will actually cover. Designed for people starting from zero. What will this series teach you? First of all, this series will teach you core programming basics. Concepts such as what variables are, data types, vectors, lists, and data frames, basic maths and operations, conditional statements like if and else, loops, and writing your own simple functions. These are the core programming basics that we'll be discussing throughout this course. And not just core programming basics, it'll teach you, of course, essential R concepts as well. Concepts such as the R console, the script editor, how R reads data, how to install and load packages, how to use RStudio effectively, working with simple datasets, and making your very first simple plots. Nothing overwhelming and nothing too advanced, just the foundations, explained clearly, slowly, and with real-world examples. And now that we have discussed about what this series will teach you, let's talk about what this series is not, or let's say what we are saving for later. To be super clear, this is not the R for Data Science course. That one is a separate series that we'll be releasing later. It'll go deeper into concepts such as data cleaning, analysis, data visualization, and working with libraries such as ggplot2. This series is all about building fundamentals so that when you do reach the data science level, it feels natural and easy. So, finally, let's discuss about what we need to do before we begin working with R. before we start working with R, you need to make sure you have R installed, RStudio installed, and a bit of curiosity, and nothing else. So first of all, let's start with installing R, shall we? And before we move on with the video, a quick shout out to the R Programming Learn and Code app from Codin inside the Google Play Store. With this app, you can learn R right from your phone, anytime and anywhere. And there are engaging and interactive courses on the app that make learning fun. And with quick facts and quizzes inside each course, you'll be truly understanding R and not just memorizing it. It also has an R compiler which allows you to type and test any bits of R code that you want. So, if you want to learn R and are looking for somewhere to start, do check out the R Programming app from Codin inside the Google Play Store. Now let's move on with the video. So what you need to do to install R on your device is first you have to open your browser. I'll be opening a new tab, and then you have to head over to cran.r-project.org. So after that, you'll be directed to this web page right here where you are prompted with the download options for both Mac and Windows and also Linux. So you can choose a download option according to your operating system. I'm using Windows, so I'll be selecting download R for Windows, and then you'll be directed to this web page. And among the subdirectories, you have to go over to base. And here is the download file for Windows. Now R 4.5.2 is the latest version as of November 20, 2025, the time that I'm recording this video. So I'll click on this, and since I've already downloaded the exe file, it'll prompt me with this window, and this is the exe file for R. Now if I execute this, it'll prompt me with a setup. So you have to click on yes. After that, it will prompt you to select the language, and after that the installation is simple. You have to keep clicking next until it's done. So no special configuration is needed. So okay, and then okay, I'll just pretend that I've read this, and then next, and then next. This is the directory. None of the things have to be changed. Next, 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 and then next. So this will install R on your device. So I'll cut to where this is completed. Okay, so after the setup completes, you can click on finish, and now you have successfully installed R on your device. Now R by itself works, but we will be using RStudio as well, as mentioned before, to make things easier and organized for us. So as you can see, I've already downloaded the setup file for RStudio as well, but I'll show you guys how to download it. So after you have downloaded R, you can just open your browser once again and go to posit.co/download/RStudio-desktop. So I'll be leaving these links down in the description, so you don't have to worry about that. After you head over to this web page right here, it'll prompt you to download R. Now since we have installed R on our device already, you don't have to do this, but instead you have to click on download RStudio desktop for Windows. After you click this, it will prompt you with installation of the setup file, and since I have already downloaded this setup file as well, I'll be clicking on OK and opening my folder. So after you have downloaded your setup file, you can click on this to execute the installation. Click on yes, and then you will be prompted with the setup window for this as well. Now after you have clicked on the exe file, you can just keep on clicking next and install it like any other app. So next, and then it starts installing. Okay, so once the setup is completed, RStudio has already been installed on your computer. So you can head over and click on to finish, and then go to search and then type RStudio. You can click on enter and it will open RStudio for you. So this is where we will be spending most of our time working with R. Now when you open RStudio, you'll be seeing 4 main panels. And if you don't see the main panel at first, you can just I think you'll be, when you install RStudio on your device at first, you'll be prompted with this, and you don't have to worry if you don't see 4 panels. You can just head over to file and then new file and then R script. So this will open a new file, or let's say a new R script for you, and then you will have 4 panels. So first is the bottom left panel, that is our console. This is the heart of R, and anything you type here runs immediately. We can see the output of our code over here, or we can just write our expressions like 1 + 1 and then see our answer right here. So this is the console. And then on our top left panel, we have the script, or let's say the editor. So this is where you write code that you want to save and execute. And think of it like a notebook that you use to find out the results of your data, or let's say the results of your code. And then on the top right, we have our environment and history panel, where you'll be able to see the history of your commands. These are the commands that I executed previous, or let's say prior to recording this video, and the commands that I'll be explaining to you guys today. And this is the environment, where you can see the variables that you have created and what values are held by those variables. And you can also see the data that you are currently working with. And after this, we have the bottom right panel, that is the files, plots, packages, and help. So here in this panel, you'll find your files, and if you are working with graphs, you'll be able to see your plots as well, and then installed libraries that are packages, and also documentation as well. So after we have discussed about the environment of R, I'll increase the font size for you guys. Let's run our very first R command. So after running 1 plus 1, let's do 2 minus 1, and let's see the answer. It's 1. So it is just that simple. This is how R works. You type something, and then it immediately shows the result after you press enter. And you can also think of R as a really sophisticated calculator, since it helps us to do really massive calculations. But we'll not be dealing with that today. We'll be discussing it further in the future. Now, let's write real code in a script. After you have created our R script by doing file, new file, and then R script, you can start with writing your code. Now, let's first of all add two variables. Let's say I do X, and if I want to store a value in this variable, I just have to make an arrow symbol. So I do this by using the less than, or let's say lesser than symbol, and then a hyphen. And after that, let's say I want to store the value of 10 in our X, or let's say 20. So this stores the value of 20 in X, and if you do Control and Enter, you can see it in the console that it is saved as 20. And if you look over to our environment panel as well, you can see the value of X is stored as 20. Now let's create a Y variable by clicking on our file, and then Y, an arrow symbol, and let's say it has a value of 30. So if I do Control Enter, it will save our value as 30. So Y is 30, as you can see in our environment tab, or let's say panel. Now, in order to run a calculation, we'll do X plus Y. And if I hit Control Enter, in the console, you'll be able to see that X plus Y's value, that is 50, is outputted. So this is how you perform calculations inside R. To run a line, you can place your cursor on that line and then hit Control Enter in Windows and Linux, or Command Enter in Mac. So do keep in mind that RStudio only keeps track of variables that you have executed on the console, or let's say executed in the current session. So if I were to create two variables called A and B, so let's say A is 5 and then B is 6, and I try to do A plus B. Now keep in mind that I have not executed these variables with Control plus Enter. If I click on A plus B line and do Control Enter, you'll be able to see that it says object A not found. And if you look at our environment panel as well, you'll be able to see that A is not recorded. So do keep in mind that you have to first of all execute these in the session. So if I select all of this and do Control Enter, you'll finally be able to see that A and B are recorded on our environment variables, or let's say environment values, and A and B are recorded on our console as well. Now when I finally do A plus B and hit Control plus Enter, you'll be able to see that it computes. So RStudio sends this line to the console and prints the results. Now before we move on, let's understand a few essentials. First of all, there are variables, which we will be discussing in our next episode in detail. So first, you can think of it as storing values. X has stored the value of 20, Y has stored the value of 30, and so on with A and B. And next, you can also do basic maths with the help of R. So let's say I wanted to calculate 5 to the power of 20. So 5 to the power of 20. It's hard to calculate without a calculator. Now, like I said before, R is basically a sophisticated calculator. So you can just hit Control and Enter, and it'll output you with the value. So that's a really big number. So I'll just do 5 to the power of, let's say, 6. And Enter. You can see it outputs the value. So you can do basic maths with the help of R as well. And then you have the option to execute functions. Now let's say I wanted to find the square root of 16. So you could just do sqrt. This is a function inside R, and then hit 16. Now if I do control enter, you can see that the square root of 16 is 4. And there are other functions as well. You can also calculate the mean of values. So let's say I have a collection of values. Let's say I have numbers, and inside this numbers variable, I'll be storing a collection of values. So let's say C, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And do control enter. You can see that it has stored the collection of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after that, if you want to find out the mean of this collection, you can just do mean and then numbers to find out the mean. So control enter, and you can see that the mean is 3, which will be correct. So when you use this C and then group a bunch of numbers together, this just means combine. You're basically grouping a bunch of numbers together into one container, and R calls this container a vector. But you don't need to worry about that word at first. Just think of it as a list of values that we want to store together inside a variable called numbers. So this is how R works. If you want to save your code so that you can reuse it later, you can just hit Ctrl and S, and then it will prompt you with saving a code. So let's say I store it as first R file, and then it saves it. So like I said before, you can visualize your data with the help of R as well. So before we end our episode, let's see a tiny graph. So if I do plot and then enter our collection of numbers, that is numbers, and then hit Ctrl enter, you can see that inside plots on our bottom right panel, there is a plotting value of your numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So this is a very simple plot, and this is just for visualization. And congratulations, you just created your first R plot. And that wraps up our episode 1. You installed R, installed RStudio, learned the interface of RStudio, that is these 4 panels right here, and also created a bunch of variables and executed a bunch of functions. So don't worry if you didn't catch all of the concepts. Like I said, this was just for demonstration. We will be discussing about all of these in detail in our upcoming videos. So in episode 2, we'll be diving deeper into variables, data types, and how R handles information behind the scenes, all at a beginner's pace. So if you found the video helpful or want to learn more of R, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more such videos. And until the next time, bye bye and happy coding.